Welcome to today's podcast episode on MonicaAnn. I'm your host, MonicaAnn. If you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a podcast episode. Hello, Dave. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast today. And huge shout out to Stacy for referring you over. She saw another one of my podcasts and said, hey, you got to have Dave on. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you very much, Monica. My name's Dave Marlon, and I'm now a 38-year resident of Las Vegas. So, Vegas is my home. I've lived with Carolina we're in our 9th year, and we each brought one boy to our marriage. I have a 23-year-old, and she has a 23-year-old, and I'm so grateful that, they both call me Dad. So when you say, who am I? First and foremost, I'm a dad. I'm a dad to Tristan and to Owen. I'm also the CEO of a nonprofit called Vegas Stronger, and Vegas Stronger is trying to engage the spirit of Las Vegas to have our whole community pull together to solve our homelessness crisis. I learned that I can't be happy if there's people in my village who are starving, are sleeping on the streets, are burning in this heat, that it's imperative to me that I do all I can to help the people, particularly in my community, get well. So Vegas Stronger is an integrated behavioral healthcare clinic that provides integrated care to any human who walks in. And we treat 100 new people every week coming off the streets. So,
Oh, wow.
That's who Dave is.
Nice. So what inspired you to create Vegas Stronger to begin with?
I have to tell you 2 stories, so bear with me.
It's
For my
your
first
time to
20 years in
shine.
Las Vegas. All right. Yeah. For my first 20 years in Vegas, I had gotten my MBA and I'd moved to Las Vegas. This is in 1987. And I went to work for an insurance company. And, being a kid who grew up in the 70s, I knew the object of life, was to get an MBA and then become the CEO and become rich. And that's what I tried to do. So for 20 years, I had progressive jobs in Sierra till I became the CEO. And I had a 7-figure salary, and I was pretty sure I had won America. I had done what I'd set out to do, but I was spiritually empty. And it was very interesting because I learned that the more drugs or alcohol or sex or money, anything I tried to put into the God-shaped hole that I had inside me, it didn't fill it up. So in 2005, I went to rehab and I had my last drink on May 15th. And it changed my life dramatically. When I came back, I still had a senior manager job at the insurance company, but I quickly realized I could not stay. So I resigned from the insurance company. I began a journey into recovery, and I opened up a drug rehab called Solutions Recovery. It became a 400-bed treatment center, the largest treatment center in the state. And during that time, I helped about 7,000 people get clean. During that time, I also, the first 5 years of it, I lost money every year. And when I say I lost money, I mean, I spent more money than I did the prior year. So I was just losing money every year for 5 years. And you know what happened? I became the richest
Tell me.
I'd ever been. Whenever I went to Smith's or I went to wherever I went in the community, somebody was coming up to me and saying, thank you for getting my daughter back. Thank you for getting my son back. And to me, I found truly my calling in life and what being rich is. And it's really in truly being able to help people. And I have a God-given talent to help separate people from drugs and alcohol. So fast forward a little bit in 2016, in prayer, I was like, you know what? To be bigger, to help more, maybe we should sell to a for-profit corporation who's nationwide. So I engaged in a transaction and I sold this little rehab that I made for a little over $20 million to a publicly traded company. And it was cute because it was me and my lawyer in a room, and they had like 20 lawyers and investment bankers. But we did this transaction, and I learned another lesson. I remember the morning after the transaction, I woke up, and while my bank had a ton of money in it, nothing changed. I woke up and I made coffee. I went to the bathroom. I had to go walk the dog. And I said, well, what do you do? I guess I go to a meeting. I'm an active 12-step participant. So I went to a meeting, and as usual, the myth that money is the solution to stuff, I again proved to myself it is not true. So it's I hope you appreciate this, but I bought a home in Del Mar overlooking the ocean, and I was like, all right, check again. I won America. I got a beach house overlooking the ocean. I had the house for several years, but whenever I prayed, it started getting louder and louder. I kept hearing, sell the beach house, go help the homeless. And each time I would hear that, I would look up and be like, come on. I've got this great gig here. I've worked for a long time. I've had 2 careers. Can I, hang out on my patio with Carolina and smoke cigars? But I kind of reluctantly decided when I got into recovery to try to follow God whenever possible, and it has never done me wrong. So I sold the beach house and I opened a little nonprofit called Vegas Stronger. And, we now have 120 staff. As I mentioned, we're helping 100 people a week get off the streets. It's an amazing team of people is what it is. But it also, it actually took more money than the beach house to get this thing rolling. But I'm so grateful for every second, and I'm on fire every day. Carolina looks at me. She's like, you're the only guy I know who wakes up every morning and can't wait to get to work. And that's how I am. I love being of service, and I love being at Vegas Stronger and helping our most underserved.
That's beautiful. Wow. I too went through that whole thing of thinking that money was going to solve my problems, and you work like a dog and you get there and you're like, oh, what have I done? I was going in the wrong direction. Yeah. And I think that that's like what typically every American is, or everyone in the world really is like, well, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to make all the money. Hold on a second.
Now you're with me. That is
Can you hear me?
it's a fallacy, I believe,
Perfect.
exacerbated. Yes, I do hear you. I think that's a fallacy exacerbated by the commercialism of the United States. That, the object of
Yep.
capitalism is to get the money. Although
Yep.
joy
And then retire and just kick your
wholeness,
feet up and travel.
right. Yeah. Now I do still travel, but without question, I work 50 or 60 hours a week at Vegas Stronger trying to help people, and it's become quite effective. We've since opened Reno Stronger, a Nevada Stronger in the rurals in Pahrump, and we recently opened up a Phoenix Stronger.
Nice.
So I believe that a integrated behavioral health solution that is using evidence-based medicine to help our most underserved, not only is it the right thing to do, but it's sustainable.
Wow. Yeah. I read on your bio on your website that you are an addictionologist, and I had never heard that word before. So tell me about that.
Okay. I have found my calling. It's to help people. One of the, I had an MBA and I'd been a CEO of an insurance company for years, so I knew how to run a clinic, and I was comfortable running a clinic. But very quickly, clinicians would come to me, or psychologists, and they would say, "Oh no, you can't do that. That's not clinically appropriate." So I ended up going to get a second master's in community mental health counseling. So I learned the counseling trade. I became licensed first as a CADC, then an LADC. Now I'm an LADC supervisor. I then became a clinical professional counselor. I then got a doctorate in psychology, also focused on addiction studies. But there's a program out of Florida by Dr. Bloom it's a 1-year addictionologist certificate. And every other student in my class was a doctor. And it's additional certification in addiction studies. And he really focuses on the reward deficiency syndrome, recognizing that humans who have an addictive disorder, their reward system is out of whack. He gets into looking at the fact that it's identified in your DNA. It's on the 11th chromosome of your, and we actually study that it is truly a biologically based disease. So all of my quests for information, whether it was writing papers, whether it was getting a doctorate or becoming an addictionologist, it always is about helping me be of maximum service to my fellow humans.
Nice. That is a great explanation. I was so curious about that when I saw that. I was like, I have never seen addictionologists before. So that's incredible that you have taken your education to that level. And then one of the things that you had mentioned was you had stopped drinking and that you had done drugs. Like, what was your specific addiction that you were battling?
I really liked all drugs. I was a party animal. In high school, I liked to drink beer and I liked to get kegs and have keg parties. And I found that helped fill that God-shaped hole in my heart. And other kids wanted to come hang around with me because I had a keg. In college, I smoked some more weed and I went to a harder liquor because when I had the bottle of the bar or the Ziploc baggie, that other people wanted to come and be around me. And all of it was a mirage. It all, in my eyes, it was helping me fill that hole, just like money, just like sex. I thought that would fill me up, and none of those things fill that hole that I talk about. It's really, being a decent human, trying to help people, as many as you can. And one of my old sponsors named Tony Newman, he used to say to me all the time, when I would tell him, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and he would say, David, he was an English guy, he'd say, David, are you being of maximum service? And I'm like, I kind of roll my eyes, all right, no, I'm not. I certainly can take more calls. I can help more people. So I really use Tony's words to try to guide me, because one of the things I found is that when I try to be of maximum service, instead of doing what Dave wants, which might be go back to bed or travel or go make out with Carolina, what Dave wants is to be indulgent. But when I instead do what I believe God wants me to do, to be of maximum service, the byproduct is joy, self-esteem, being helpful to my fellows.
Yeah. And peace for sure. And that's
Peace.
wonderful.
I'm glad you mentioned peace. Peace, that's a whole nother topic, because when I came into recovery, someone talked to me about serenity. And I honestly was like, what the heck is serenity, man? I was like, where's the party? And I realized very quickly that I had no idea. I had no idea what peace was. And I'm not in a constant state of peace. I'd be lying if I told you I was, but I do get glimmers of peace, through the day, in the evenings, in the mornings, especially. And there's absolute joy and peace.
That's beautiful. And one of the other things that I read online was that you actually opened a school called Mission High School well, tell me about that.
Okay. Well, I didn't open it. However, here's what happened. When I was running Solutions Recovery, several of my legislator friends came to Solutions. Several of my teacher and community-minded friends came, and they talked about opening up a recovery high school. We came up with a name for it, Mission High School. It's been around now I think it's in its 7th year here in Las Vegas.
Nice.
I, for free, did the drug testing for that school and tried to help them. But there's a team of people. This is a Clark County School District official school funded by them. So I didn't open it. Clark County School District did. But there was a big team of people that originated on the campus of my rehab, which helped make it. And many people have done a lot of work to try to help make this success. So I love Mission High School. It is sort of waffling because we had a great leader of the school, and it steadily grew for the first 4 years. And then she moved on. And it's hard to have a recovery organization embedded within the bureaucracy of Clark County School District. They suffer from enrollment challenges. And I'm sure, think of you when you were in high school. The idea of going to a recovery high school probably wouldn't seem cool. It seems cool to me now, but when I was a kid, it wouldn't. I understand that school it's not doing as well as it should because of enrollment issues, but I applaud every kid who makes the choice to go to a recovery high school to reduce the temptation to be around like-minded people and to engage in completing their education in a recovery-oriented environment.
Wow. Yeah, that is so cool. And I hope that, you have a turnaround on enrollment. So prayers will be said for that because it's definitely needed. Yeah. I remember going back after high school and going to a party, and I smoked weed in the 8th grade once my sophomore year and once in my adult life. And it is not for me. Drugs never were. In fact, I think it was the 4th grade, maybe 5th. anyways, one year I went to this elementary school and I was part of what was called the esteem team. And we would go around and sing songs and dance about drugs and not doing them. So, and then in high school, I actually worked in a hospital in the kitchen and I would prep all the food and then go around and deliver it. And one of the things that I remember was going into this particular suite that I had to be buzzed into, and it had security. And it was a whole bunch of teenagers, and it basically looked like a college dorm room. And I asked one day, I was like, well, what is this area for? You know, like there's kids living here. There was posters on the wall and they were all just like sitting around and, you know, socializing. And it was a section of the hospital where it had kids who were dependent on drugs that were living in the hospital essentially. So that had a lasting impression on me. And if you could say scared straight, that was definitely me. So yeah, I think
Wow.
that there's definitely a need for that. And then let's see, I've got a few notes here. Sorry. When
Yeah,
I
and I
emailed
want to give
you,
you kudos. Yes.
go ahead.
I just want to give you kudos for being part of your esteemed team and for
Thanks.
feeding people in the hospital and getting a glimmer of what a rehabilitation unit looks like at a hospital,
Yeah.
because most people don't really know what it is until they get there.
Yeah, I had no clue that it even existed. You know, I go through the door and I was young. I was in my senior year of high school, and here I am serving food to kids that are my own age. And I was like, what, why are they here? You know, and I didn't even know that that existed at that time. So, yeah, it was interesting. And it really did have a lasting impression on me of like, well, I don't want to be addicted. And I come from a family of addicts as well. So, yeah, it was nothing that I ever wanted to take part in. So I'm so glad that you're out here, you know, offering a, because I will say too, a lot of people don't know any better. You know, they may come from families that are all addicts. And so when they find a solution like yours and they see a different side of life and a different way of living, you may be showing them something that they didn't even know existed. So it's beautiful what you're doing for sure. When I sent you the email about doing the podcast, you had said, that's perfect. I had just done some kind of walk.
Yes, that is perfect.
So what
So
was that about?
we did the Camino de Santiago, and Caroline and I 3 years ago we did the French route where we went to southern France and we walked for 500 miles to the Compostela de Santiago, where the remains of the apostle Saint James is buried. And it's a
Oh.
pilgrimage, which about 1,000 pilgrims a day do this walk. It took us 33 days of walking. And during that time, you reflect, you go in hundreds of churches, you talk to other pilgrims, you get closer to God. But it is a magical walk. And after doing that first one a month ago, Carolina and I sought out to do what's called the Portuguese route, where we started from Lisbon, and instead of walking across the Iberian Peninsula, we walked 300 miles north along the coast of Portugal. And we did our second Camino. It's an absolute, it's a magical experience because everybody on the walk is a fellow pilgrim and they all are going for their own spiritual purposes. But every rest stop will like have a coffee or a cappuccino. We'll talk to other pilgrims. It's all walking through ancient, beautiful areas. Almost the whole path is cobblestoned. And it's just, it's really great to get pulled out of Vegas and be immersed in this old world charm and seeing hospitals, excuse me, seeing churches and farmland and the ocean, and then ending up to do service in this magnificent cathedral. It's just a beautiful thing. And I encourage everyone to do a Camino sometime in their life. There was many lessons that I learned during the Camino. There's a movie called The Way, which is about one actor doing his Camino. There's also several books on it, but the sign for the Camino is the scallop shell. When you see fellows on the Camino, you say "Buen Camino" to them. So I keep this with me today. Also, next to me, I have this. The whole trail is marked by these shells with a little yellow arrow pointing you which way to go.
Nice.
And I attribute it, you might think the way to go is to money or drugs or sex. It's not, stay on the path, stay close to God, and be of service.
Yeah, absolutely. How does somebody get information about doing a Camino?
Um, when the way everybody gets information nowadays, I Googled it, and I found a service that actually was able to book my lodging for the whole way, because 33 different hotel rooms and a string, that's just a logistical challenge. I'm going to tell you, most people do it with a backpack and a sleeping bag. So most pilgrims, they don't have lodging, but Caroline and I, we stayed in a hotel every night. So not quite roughing it, but it's still, we did the walk. But, one story I'll tell you is when we finished the first Camino, walking for 33 days, we looked at each other and we were actually 50-50. Should we go back home or should we just keep walking forever? Because that became our new meditative state as a couple. And that we were just so comfortable waking up, having a little breakfast, drinking our coffee, and then going on our walk. And generally walking 8 hours a day. It was so meditative and beautiful, and so many magical things happened along the way.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I am going to Google that and get more information. It sounds like
That's
something that I would absolutely love to do. How do people get involved with Vegas Stronger?
Thanks for asking, because we're really trying to really pull the community together to help, stop homelessness. And there's a variety of things you could do. One thing is you can come down and we'll give you golden tickets, because many of us want to be good Christians. And when we see someone on the side of the road who's begging and they have a pet, maybe, we want to give them $5 or $10 or $1. We want to help them. But what we have found is that 9 times out of 10, if you give money to a person who is panhandling on the side of the road, that's going to drugs and alcohol, and that is not helping them at all. So we hand out these golden tickets, and instead of giving money to people on the corners, we ask you to give them a golden ticket, which they flip around, and it says they could come to Vegas Stronger, get free food and shelter. And because I used to run an insurance company, in the small print in the bottom, it says must engage in a counseling program. So when they come in, we get them food, we'll get them new shoes or clothes, and then we sit them down with a counselor and we try to figure out, why are you homeless, and what do we have to fix in your life to help you get well and become self-supporting again. So one way is by golden tickets. Another way is you could come down and volunteer at Vegas Stronger. We have hundreds of people in our campus every day, and we would love help, whether it's talking to people. We have a massive clothing closet because we give clothes to everyone who comes in. Most of the unhoused who come in, each day they come back and they need new outfits. So we're constantly going through clothes. We always need people in our clothing closet. I would be remiss if I didn't say that we do have 120 staff, which we have to pay them every 2 weeks. So if anybody could jump on the vegasstronger.org website and make even a $10 financial contribution, it's really appreciated. We are trying to engage the Vegas community to solve homelessness, because homelessness is the people who might tell you, oh no, I want to be free. They are suffering, and they shouldn't be suffering. The families who want to use our parks and walk on our streets, they don't feel safe if there's people who are sleeping out there, who are unhoused. And what we can't forget is we are a tourist destination. And while 20 years ago, the iconic statement, what happens here stays here, that was great for then. I believe Vegas has outgrown that slogan. And I would way prefer that Las Vegas has a soul, and we help solve the social condition of homelessness. I think that's where people would want to go and spend their tourism dollars, at a city that had a soul, that helped solve homelessness. So we're hoping that our whole community could pull together, help get Vegas stronger, and let's get everyone off the streets.
Nice. That's beautiful. I love that.
I'm so glad you asked. You did good homework, Monica.
Yes, absolutely. And where can people find you personally? Can they follow you on social media?
I'm on all socials. I'm an active TikToker, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and Snapchat. You could email me, you could text me, you can call me, but it's all under Vegas Stronger.
All under Vegas
And
Stronger.
actually, if you
Okay, so
go
if
on to Vegas Stronger and say, and you jump in that email and you write it, it actually comes from my phone. And sometimes if if you want a psychiatrist, I'm going to send you down to psychiatry. If you want a counselor, I'm going to connect you with counseling. If you want to talk to Dave, I'm going to respond to you directly.
Nice. And you had mentioned, when people come in, they have to engage in one of your programs. So what exactly are the services that Vegas Stronger offers, and what does that look like for somebody who walks through your doors?
That's a great question. Now, we are a clinically based program. So if you walked in the door today and said, "Hey, I'm Monica and I want some help," what I would do is have one of our front desk people would screen and say, "Are you willing to get an assessment?" And if you said yes, we'd first see if you were hungry, probably give you some food and some water. Then you'd go in with a licensed Nevada counselor, master's prepared or above, who would sit down with you and do something called a biopsych and social assessment. And we would find out everything that's going on with you, medications you're on, drug history, mental health issues. They'll do a mental status exam. At the end of that, what they do is they come up with a treatment plan, and they find out that Monica's actually doing fine, that she would do good with counseling once a month. We would then set you up with counseling once a month. If you walked in and you, based on your assessment, needed more intensive therapy, we would immediately schedule you and get you connected to more intensive therapy. So when you talked about that hospital room you walked into and you saw posters in the wall and people socializing, many of our clients are engaging in 20 hours a week of counseling in Vegas Stronger. You're going to find our rooms look a lot like that hospital room you walked into, where there's a clinician there, there's case managers, and we're helping support people in entering recovery. So everything starts with the clinical assessment.
Okay. And the counseling, all of that is offered through Vegas Stronger directly, or do you guys source out for that?
I have a little over 80 counselors that are employed.
Okay.
We also have psychiatric prescribers, and I didn't mention it, but we got a lot of other cool stuff. I have personal trainers. So every client gets a personal trainer and engages in a fitness program. We have yogis. Every client gets connected to a yogi and does yoga 2 or 3 times a week. Recently contracted with a couple of these famous actors, and we have these acting classes led by Peter Wise. And Peter, who was like the casting director of Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway and hundreds of other shows, he does this acting class. And we're finding that some of our clients are really connecting to the theater program, maybe also from counseling, but they're done in concert. So we have a variety of modalities that we connect, in addition to transportation and food and medications and primary care and psychiatric care, all here delivered at Vegas Stronger.
Nice. And do you have any services for children specifically?
We absolutely do. However, we have a sister organization called the Neubauer Mental Health Clinic. Now, I'm surprised, but many of our unhoused have sexual offenses. So I don't want the kids coming to this office because we have lots of sex offenders. So we divert them to Neubauer Mental Health, and they offer both intensive and counseling and have a variety of both pediatric and adolescent trained clinicians available to help. So
Okay.
yes, we treat adolescents as well as adults, but we bifurcate them because we want to keep the kids safe.
Yes, that makes total sense. So thank you for that. Thank you for thinking ahead for that. With the people who are, coming in, you do offer all of those services. Is there employment services, like help for job placement?
Yes, of course. Yeah, and that's one of the things I learned very quickly is you could take a person who's unhoused and I could separate them from their drugs. I could address their mental health issues, but I still have a person in poverty. And that really to help them, we need to be able to not only solve homelessness and not only solve substance use disorders and mental illnesses, but we need to solve poverty. So our case managers work with a variety of job placement places to get people placed. However, if you come in our door today with a fentanyl dependency and tell me, Dave, what I just need is a job, we're going to tell you respectfully after we do the assessment that you actually don't need a job. What you need to do is you need to work on getting separated from fentanyl for a period of time till you're well and able to have a job. So most of the time,
Interesting.
we're kind of pumping the brakes on work because people walk in thinking all I need is a house and a job. But if they're injecting methamphetamines every day, to me, they are misguided and they need to address their primary condition first. So we work very hard to have people address the primary mental health disorder first, then work on getting them employment. We also work with several of the unions. One of my favorite things to do is to get somebody into an apprenticeship program with a union after they're maybe 6 months clean and sober and mentally stable and in a sober living, living a good life. But we're big fans of connecting people to any of the labor unions, which help provide them a good pathway out of poverty.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. All things that I would not have thought about, but that makes perfect sense that they would need to work on getting clean first before they get employment.
Yeah.
So, are you helping them to get like government assistance or anything like, like food stamps or anything like in between to like sustain themselves before they get into employment?
Absolutely. Most clients, when they come in, they need to see case management. And step one is almost always getting them identification. So we're getting tons and we're paying for it. We're getting birth certificates and driver's licenses and social security cards and getting them that information. Then we're helping them. And this is all in concert with their substance use disorder treatment. Then we're making sure that obviously that we're getting them housed, maybe at first in a shelter. Maybe it's second in a sober living. Then after the sober living, moving from a sober living to permanent housing. We want every client to move towards independence and to self-supporting. And what's been shocking is that, when I came here, I thought that, maybe a quarter of them would be able to. And what we're finding is that even no matter how crazy they might seem, whether they're ranting and raving and they don't have some clothes, but we're able to help people make dramatic improvements by getting them an EBT, feeding them healthy breakfast, feeding them a healthy lunch, get them in a stable living environment, taking psychotropic meds. And it's shocking how 6 months of that will have major improvements. And if you would meet some of our clients who walk in day one and say, oh, that person would never be employable, I would tell you to sit down and come back in 90 days or come back in 180 days because our clients do very, very well.
Wow, that's incredible. That's so good to hear. Yeah, there's a lot more to. I was on the board of a nonprofit years ago, and there's so much more to get helping people get back on their feet than what people think of. They just think that it's so easy if they've never actually seen it firsthand. But I think that you did a great job, just in this podcast of kind of explaining how layered that is and how many different things have to be done. And then, of course, there's a financial aspect to it. Somebody has to pay for the birth
Absolutely.
certificates, social security
Right.
cards, and all of those things are needed to get the food stamps, to sustain while they're getting clean,
Mhm.
and then also to get employment. So yeah. And then what about something just popped in my mind? What about transportation? How are you guys handling that? Like, how are they actually getting to the office to get the social security card and the birth certificate? Because again, all these things are like popping in my mind. Well, how'd they get there?
Yeah.
Because they don't have
Well,
cars.
and it the same thing happened to me where, I thought I was opening up a counseling center. And then very quickly I had a massive food prep area and I realized that my clients can't respond to counseling because they're starving. So I got in the food business. So now we're feeding all these people every day. I now have a fleet of buses and we're transporting. My buses drive over 6 a day, picking people up and shuttling them all over the valley because if you come in and you're from wherever and you're now homeless, I might have to put you in a shelter for a week, but my bus will come down and pick you up every morning at the shelter. At the end of the day, we'll drop you off. If you do that and engage in treatment for a week, we'll then move you to a sober living. But again, we're going to now pick you up from the sober living and bring you in. And, hopefully along that journey, we'll also help you get bus passes to help get some independence. We also have a bicycle ministry, and we give every single client a bicycle,
Oh,
which,
wow.
since transportation is one of the social determinants of healthcare, it's just part of what we try to patch together to have a constellation of services to be able to help our most underserved get well.
Yeah. Wow.
I really
Yeah.
want to encourage you, Monica. If if you could come down sometime and just do a tour for half an hour just to see it, I think, I've verbalized it somewhat. I would encourage you, as well as any of your viewers, to come down and take a look at Vegas Stronger and come take a tour. It's really it's an amazing place.
Yeah, I will actually be in Vegas next week for my daughter's baby shower. And yes, she has a lot going on while I'm down there. So I'll be down there for 2 weeks. So I'll definitely stop by. I
Okay.
would love to see the operation and, what it is. Maybe I'll even do like a video as I walk through as like a follow up to our podcast. So it'd be kind of cool to do that. And do I get to see Stacy while I'm there?
You
Is she on
absolutely get
site?
to see Stacy. Yes. And I'll make
Yeah.
sure Gina, one of our personal trainers, shows you around our gym too. I think you would dig dig the gender specific training and some of the gender specific groups we do, because
Nice.
although I'm very enthusiastic and joyous about being of service, I also read the charts of our thousands of clients and some of the horrific things that happen, particularly to the females who come through here. It reinforces how serious it is that we should not have people sleeping on the streets in our community, that we all need to work together to get everyone off the streets.
Yeah, food, clothing, housing, and like you said, that independence. The whole point is,
Mhm.
not to just hand them a sandwich, but to teach them how to make their own sandwich, right? And hopefully help them get
Yeah.
back on their feet. And yeah, that's beautiful. I love what you do. And, bless you, Carolina. So hopefully I get to see her while I'm down there too. I would love to catch up with her.
Yeah, I hope so too. She's wonderful. She's a LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker. She doesn't work for Vegas Stronger. She works for a different agency, but we're both squarely in the helping others business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know I love to see your travels and all the great things you're doing. And I am 100% going to Google Camino because I want to do one. You have
Nice.
inspired me. And thank you so much again, just for agreeing to be on the podcast. I'm so grateful that Stacy connected us, and saw one of my other podcasts that I did on fentanyl. Actually, I did that with Giuseppe, and that was the one that she saw. And she was like, oh, you have to have Dave on. He has a whole God story. So God bless you and everything that you're doing. I will absolutely be saying prayers for the Mission High School as well. I hope that,
Thank you.
more people will be open to that because there absolutely is a lot of pressures in high school with partying, drugs, alcohol, and some people just, I don't want to say that they're not strong enough, they're more likely to participate in those things and not be able to say no. And removing them from that environment is important. So I will absolutely be praying for that. And I appreciate it. And I will post all the links below the video when I post on YouTube so that people can reach out to your website and get in contact with you to either donate or volunteer.
Awesome. Thank you much for your time, Monica. It was a pleasure
Perfect.
meeting you.
You too. Thank you so much, Dave.